Okay, so here we are going to discuss another concept, that is the memory cell area. So this is the equivalent area to store 1 bit. So this is the area of 1 bit data. So of course you want as small as possible, but we see the trade-off earlier. So we are going to normalize this area of 1 bit in the number of f squared. F is the lithography technology node. For example, your 32 nanometer, 22 nanometer, and so on. So this is like your technology node number. And typical values for the SRAM will be like 150 to 300 f squared, depending on the applications. Your level 1, level 2, level 3 cache will have different area. And you can imagine that the L1, as L1 is closer to the processor, it's faster. And we see the trade-off. Faster means larger area. So then this one is more like close to the 300 f squared. And the L3 is more towards the other side, 150 f squared. L3 will be slower, but it occupies less area. So the SRAM is relatively large because we need 6 transistors. And if you lay out the 6 transistor in 2-dimensional space, you will occupy those kind of area. And you can plug in those numbers. If you are at 32 nanometer technology node, you can have 32 nanometer square as f square and then multiply by 150 or 300. You will get the actual area for 1 bit data storage if you use SRAM. And DRAM is smaller, as we discussed earlier. It's 1 transistor, 1 capacitor. And the industry really push the DRAM layout to be very compact. And you can get 6 f squared to store 1 bit. So relatively, it's more compact than the SRAM. And then flash. So depending on what kind of flash, to answer your question, what kind of flash? If it's no flash, it's 10 f squared per bit. So in the flash technology, actually there are 2 types. One is called no flash, one is called NAND flash. And no flash is less common, but you can find it in, for example, the microcontroller. So if you are familiar with microcontroller hardware, if you look at the specs in the microcontroller, you have a few megabytes embedded data storage to store your code. Then you will see this no flash used in the microcontroller. And the no flash is about 10 f squared. But if you look at other types of flash, which is NAND flash, this is more popular these days because the SSD is based on this NAND flash. For the NAND flash, the single flash memory cell will give you 4 f squared. So it's denser than the DRAM. But this is based on 2-dimensional NAND flash and single level cell. So we will talk about in more details in lecture 19 about the flash. But here, let me just quickly give you an overview. So the flash, the simplest flash will be based on the 2-dimensional flash, and the single level cell means you are going to store 1 bit per transistor. This transistor is flash transistor. But you can store more bits in 1 transistor in the NAND flash. So for example, you can have this multi-level cell. For example, you can have 2 bits per cell or 3 bits per cell. This is 2 bits. This is 3 bits. So what does this mean? 2 bits and 3 bits. So 1 bit means 0 and 1. 2 bits means 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So you have 4 levels for 2 bits. And 3 bits, you will have 8 levels. This is binary encoding. And the NAND flash is capable of storing multiple bits in a single transistor. So it can provide you much higher density, right? So in one transistor, you can store 2 bits information. We will talk about how to do that later in the lecture 19. So this is one way to increase the density. And also the other way to increase the density is to do the 3-dimensional integration for the NAND flash. This is happening today. And the SSD you buy today actually is all based on this so-called 3D NAND flash. This is to vertically stack multiple transistors in a unit space. So for example, here, if you have multiple layers, you are going to reduce the area horizontally in the lateral dimension. So you can, if you have multiple transistors stacked vertically in this 2-dimensional space, this 2-dimensional space here is like 4f squared. This area is like 4f squared. But you can have multiple transistors built up vertically occupying this 4f squared. So equivalently, each transistor will only occupy 4f squared divided by n if you have n layer of those transistors. So if you have n layer, you will save the space in the horizontal or lateral dimension. So this is how you build very high density SSD. And also you can combine those two, this multi-level per cell versus together with the 3-dimensional integration, you will get the 4f squared divided by 2n. If you have n layer and each cell store 2 bits, then you will get 4f squared divided by 2n, or 4f squared divided by 3n if one transistor stores 3 bits. So this is the equivalent area to store 1 bit information. So this will be much smaller than this DRAM or SRAM. So that's why the NAND flash has very high density. So this high density will translate to the low cost because you are going to spend similar cost on the area in the manufacturing, in the fabrication. So if you can pack more bits in the same area here means same horizontal lateral area, then you are going to reduce the cost per bit to reduce the total price of your SSD. So this is the trend for the NAND flash today. So any questions here? So here we quantitatively look at the density of those technologies. So in terms of the memory cell area. Again, this will reflect the chart here, the area versus access time. But in the next slide, we quantitatively look at area normalized to the f squared, and you see those numbers. Any questions here? If no, then let's move to the memory array. So in the memory technology, you are not going to deal with individual memory cell. It's always organized to the array. Array means what? Means rows and columns. So here in this diagram, you see here this memory cell array. So this means there is multiple rows and columns of the memory cells. So here we have this so-called word line for the row and bit line for the column. So in the memory array, the word line stands for the row. So this is word line. And vertically you have the column, and we call it bit line. So at the intersection between the word line and bit line, you will have the memory cell. It can be the SRAM, or can be the DRAM, or can be the flash. So those wires, those word line and bit line are the metal wires. Those forms the memory array. And then here we will have those address bits to decode the location of the memory cell. Because you have a large array, you need to locate where your memory cell is. And here we can have, for example, n bits for the row address. Then you need to use this decoder to decode the address. Hopefully you have learned this in the 2020. So n bits address, after the decoding, it will become 2 to the power n word lengths. So for example, if you have 10 bits in your address, so the memory row size will be 2 to the power 10. That will be 1024 rows. Similarly, you will have the colon decoding. So here, if you have m bits in the colon address, then you will go through the colon decoder, and the colon decoder will control the multiplexing, the mux, and then you will locate the colon here. So one thing I want to emphasize here is that typically we can have multiple colons grouped together as k bits. So this can be one word. So for example, one word can be 8 bits. So when you do the colon decoding, you don't need to individually select those 8 bits, because every time when you read out, you read out those 8 bits as a group. That means one group here is 8 bits, one word. So then what is the total capacity of this memory cell array? That depends on the colon address and the row address. So on the row side, you have 2 to the power n. On the colon side, you will have 2 to the power m groups of colon. And one group of colon will give you k bits, because every time you read out k bits, those adjacent 8 bits will be read out together. So the capacity of this memory cell array will be 2 to the power n times k times 2 to the power n. So this is the capacity of the memory array. So any questions here? So depending on the memory operation mode, you will need those peripheral circuitry here. And for example, you have the write mode or the read mode. If you are doing read, so what you are going to do is to have those address ready, and then after the decoding, you are going to select the individual cells. And then this individual cell, the data will be read out. And then this sense amplifier will do the job, okay? So sense amplifier is for the read operation. And you need to sense the data, whether it's 0 or whether it's 1. And then you need to amplify the signal, because typically the 0 or 1 actually has a very small signal. For example, if 0 is like 0.1 volts and 1 is like 0.9 volts, then you need to sense those voltage and then amplify that to the digital 0 or digital 1. So this is what the sense amp does. So this answers your question. What is the sense amp? It senses the data and amplifies the data into the logical 1 and 0, and then you can send it out to the I/O. Similarly, for the write operation, you also need to prepare your new data through the write driver. And then after your new data is ready at this write driver, you are going to open the word line and bit line, and then locate the cells you are going to write. And then those new data will replace the old data in the memory cell here. So then you write in the data from here, the write driver. So you are going to replace that with the new data. So you have those read and write operation modes. Of course, you have a third operation in the memory array. That is, you do nothing. Okay. If you do nothing, that means the memory is maintaining the data. So this is like a retention mode of the memory cell. So you have 3 modes. You either read the data, write the data, or you are doing nothing. If you are doing nothing, the memory cell are maintaining the data. Of course, for the SRAM and DRAM, those are volatile memory. You can maintain the data while the power is on. After you remove the power supply, then those volatile memory like SRAM, DRAM, the data is gone. And here there's another concept, which is array efficiency. So this stands for the area percentage occupied by the memory cells over the total chip size. So that means it's a percentage of this memory cell array. So this box, okay, this area over the total chip area here, because the rest of the chip is occupied by those so-called peripheral circuitry. This is to support those read and write operations. You need to have those address decoder, sense amplifier, write driver, and sometimes you need a charge pump to generate high voltages on the chip. Because for the flash, as we see later, you need like 10 volts to program it. And nominally, your logic supply VDD like 1 volt. Then you need to convert the voltage from 1 volt to 10 volt. So you need some circuits to do that. And those consumes the area for the peripheral circuitry. So the array efficiency is measured as this part, okay, the cell array, memory cell array over the total. And for the caches on the processor, so the array efficiency is typically low, less than 50%. And with DRAM, it's like 60%, and for the NAND flash, it's about 70%. So this is the typical array efficiency. Next, we are going to use a concrete example to look at the caches on the processor. So this is the processor from Intel at 32 nanometer technology node. And in this processor, it has 6 cores. So those cores, has those multipliers and other logic. In total, the chip has more than 1 billion transistors. And here, what you can see from the image of the chip is this L3 cache in this region. So the L3 cache in this case has a capacity of 12 megabytes. And each cell is based on 6 transistor SRAM, and it occupies 0.171 micrometer square for each SRAM cell. And it has 900 millivolts active VDD. So this is power supply for read or write operation, but it lowers the supply voltage to 700 millivolt for the data retention if you are not doing nothing. So this is the basic information about this L3 cache. Of course, this one also have L2 cache, but it's invisible from this image because L2 cache is relatively small capacity and it's built-in embedded into those cores. It's probably here, but it's hard to visualize. But the L3 cache, because it's large and it's shared between the cores, so you can see that here and use those regular patterns for the memory array. So this is this processor, and here we are going to do a practice, that is to estimate the array efficiency for the L3 cache. So how do we do that? So here we are asking the array efficiency for the L3 cache. For example, in the L3 cache, probably you see those kind of memory cell arrays, but it also have many other peripheral circuits like those ones. So we are asking what is the percentage of the memory cell array in the L3 cache over the L3 total size here. So that is defined as array efficiency. So how do we approach this kind of question? So by definition, the array efficiency is the SRAM cell size divided by the chip size. So here, for the L3 chip size, we can estimate what is the total area for those L3 cache area. So you see those 2 white boxes. And from the total chip, you can find this data from the Intel's spec. It will give you the total chip area for this. That is for the whole processor, 240 millimeter square. But if you use ruler and estimate what is the percentage of this white box, those two white boxes, is about 26%. So this gives you the total L3 area. So those two white boxes. This is 240 millimeter square multiplied by 26%. So you get those two white boxes area. But the question is, what is percentage of those memory cells over those two white boxes? Then we need to look at what is really in this L3 cache. So the L3 cache, each SRAM cell is 0.171 micrometer square, as we show here. But this is one cell, okay, 1 bit. So how many bits in the L3 cache? So it's a 12 megabyte L3 cache. But we need to do a translation because 1 byte is 8 bits. So 12 megabytes is actually 96 megabits. So if you do the multiplication of those two, you will get the SRAM, SRAM cell array area. And then you use this SRAM cell array area divided with this total L3 area. You will get this 20% array efficiency in this design. Of course, this is an estimation. So any questions for this example? All right, so let's save this clip.